Hey everybody, I thought I would make a video here today while I have a few minutes for YouTube. Now I was going over some questions I have received on YouTube, and I always appreciate those because sometimes I get ideas for videos. And last week I made a video where I talked about the Hittites and ancient Hattusis and possible vitrification of stones found at this site. And I think whenever you have reports of vitrification, you should look at it quite seriously and do a lot of research on it, because if indeed you do have vitrification of rocks at a site, then something much greater happened than just a simple natural disaster that we are familiar with today. So I think that should be researched pretty heavily when you have reports of vitrification. And I had a question from a subscriber asking about ancient Mohenjo Daro in Pakistan. He said, wasn't there vitrification found at that site on rocks in a central area? And he said he had heard about that on the show Ancient Aliens. And I thought that was an excellent question. Number one, because that really was the first time I have ever heard about Mohenjo Daro. I think maybe about 8 years ago when the show Ancient Aliens first came out. And they talked about Mohenjo Daro and vitrification found at a central site and other things that they related to ancient nuclear warfare. So I thought, geez, holy cow, that's worth looking into. And I kind of did. And lately I did a little more research, so I thought I would talk about Mohenjo Daro today. And we are going to zoom in here. And before we do, now about 4,500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, we had the first traces of what we can call really ancient civilizations, and their record of it coming from Egypt and ancient Sumer. And also we had the Indus Valley civilization popping up at that time, and it's not really talked about so much, maybe because the great temples and what has been found at these sites really doesn't give you a real good testimony as to who these people actually were. There's no really great temples, shrines, stories about the gods found. It is just simply a well laid out, pretty complex city coming from 4,500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, and this was discovered around 1922, which was really the golden age of exploration. And what has been uncovered is really pretty incredible. If you think about it, coming from 4,500 years ago, when it's really the city flourished, possibly had as many as 40 or 50,000 people living in it. But this was the central area of the city right here. And the main structure of the city wasn't a pyramid or a temple to a king or anything like that. It was simply a granary where people came and got their main staple, I guess, for their diet. And incredibly enough, a central thing that was also used, I guess, quite heavily and was a main component of the city was this. And what is this? This is what we would call today a swimming pool that is 60 meters long. And this area was very hot. It has a similar climate to Las Vegas today. And just as pools are popular in Las Vegas for a place to cool off when the temperature is over 100 degrees, 4,500 years ago, we have a swimming pool in this town. And the city of Mohenjo Daro. Here is another shot of some of that grid system, the individual homes, and I guess each individual group of homes emptied out into a courtyard. And people who write about Mohenjo Daro say these people were really into order and cleanliness, just because each individual home had a changing area and a bath. And there's a sewer system laid out underneath the city. And they were really masters of how to use water, coming from like 4,500 years ago. And I think that's very remarkable. But I think there is another reason that each home had a bath unit, and that's just because this is one of the hottest places on Earth, I guess, with temperatures constantly over 100 degrees. Each home having a bath area was just, I think, a way to stay cool, or to try to stay cooler. I can't imagine living here in Las Vegas without air conditioning. I'm kind of amazed how the natives did it hundreds of years ago in the surrounding valleys around here. But I thought I would just throw that in there. and they say this place was ruled. Probably each group of homes had an individual leader, and they all got together throughout the whole city and made up the laws and organized the city. So I thought that I should mention that, and that is just a theory on how they think Mohenjo Daro was ruled. And there was really no evidence of kings, and they didn't seem to occupy a lot of their time in immortalizing kings and gods, but there has been a few things found at Mohenjo Daro, and here is one of them. And people theorize that this might have been some kind of ruler or king, but there is no evidence to state that exactly. And just very few artifacts like this have been found there, but this is one of them that was found in the 1920s, and they say this is the dancing girl, a nude or semi-nude figure of a woman they say is dancing. I thought that was pretty interesting. And here is a panoramic kind of view of Mohenjo Daro, and the brickwork here coming from 4,500 years ago, and some of this in the bathing areas was waterproof 4,500 years ago. I think that's pretty incredible. But these people laid out a very impressive city, and there was really no temples. The gods were not really a preoccupation with these people as far as their monuments. Up here, the central thing in the city was actually a granary, simply where people got their food. I believe that that's what that is, near that swimming pool I showed you. But this, coming from the time it does, is really remarkable. And in the show Ancient Aliens, which I got my first really taste of Mohenjo Daro and what it was all about, they say that possibly in 1500 BC, this was destroyed by ancient nuclear warfare, and they say there is vitrification found at this site. But looking on Google Earth and doing research on that, I find that to be a fairly ridiculous theory, just because if there was ancient nuclear warfare here, these bricks, and these are oven-baked bricks, by the way. These are not sun-dried bricks. This is another civilization. These are wood-fired, heated bricks that were made to use the city, but there would have been massive destructions. The city would not have survived nearly intact as well as it looks today. So I thought I would mention that. And as far as the vitrification found at the site, well, I believe there are 3 different kinds of vitrification. There is vitrification caused by a nuclear blast. There is vitrification caused by maybe a meteor or some sort of celestial impact upon the earth where sand or the rock gets fused. And there is also vitrification made when you make pottery. When pottery is heated up to a great temperature, there is a certain type, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but there is a certain type of vitrification when you make pottery that is classified as vitrification, and there is a central site here where pottery was made, and that, I believe, was the vitrification found at this site, used, I believe, in David Davenport's book coming from a few decades back, entitled Nuclear Warfare, 1500 BC or something like that. But as far as the quotes that they use in Ancient Aliens and Giorgio Tsoukalos, the quotes he uses are inaccurate. They are not stated exactly how they are written, and I can't remember where exactly he quotes from, the Mahabharata or the Rig Veda or something like that, but they are not accurate at all. So the vitrification and the nuclear warfare at Mohenjo Daro, I think, is totally bogus, and they just reach too much on Ancient Aliens. But once again, I do believe extraterrestrial life is prevalent in the universe. I'm not saying I don't believe in that, but I'm saying Ancient Aliens stretches it, and sometimes they do it ridiculously. So, with that said, back to Mohenjo Daro. I think this is a very cool ancient city, very well laid out. These people seem to have it together. They didn't find a lot of time or necessity in honoring their gods or kings. They just were a very orderly, civilized people. And as far as the end of Mohenjo Daro, something happened it did end, and it could have ended fairly swiftly. On that Ancient Alien show, they say that bodies were found at Mohenjo Daro, and I guess there was bodies found, but I guess the age of when these people died were like 1,000 years apart. So that part of the Ancient Aliens is kind of questionable. But something did happen. The civilization did end, and interestingly enough, I think I'm going to bring this up, it did end around the same time as the Hittites did. Now, do we have any evidence something bad might have happened as far as a comet impact or a meteor impact that threw the Earth's climate or temperature way off kilter? Well, let's go to the Greenland Ice Cores, and this is really where you can get a sense of what was happening at a certain period of time. Here at the very end is our current little rise in temperature, right there. Now, at the time that the Hittites ended and Mohenjo Daro ended is right here, right where the largest spike in warming is over the past, say, at least 4,300 years. It makes our little rise in temperature look insignificant. Something bad happened at the exact same time that Mohenjo Daro and the Hittite civilization went under. Can you tie those endings of those civilizations directly to this huge spike, which is really comes at the exact time that Mohenjo Daro and the Hittite Empire ended? Well, I just think that is a question that should be looked at when you bring in all the theories that should be looked at. So, something did happen that the ice core, the Greenland Ice Cores, say that. They show that at the exact same time period that I was looking at. I find that very interesting. So, this great civilization that lasted at least 1,000 years at Mohenjo Daro, a city of about 50,000 people. How did it end? Well, I think that is a great question. Who these people were, it's kind of a faceless civilization. We call it the Indus Valley civilization just because that locates it. They come same time as the beginnings of the dynasties in Egypt and the Sumerian civilization. Hope you thought this was interesting. I'm done rambling. You have a nice day.